The lion is called the king of the jungle, but it doesn't live in jungles. The tiger does, and in many ways, it's bigger, stronger, and just as dominant. So, why hasn't the tiger ever worn the crown? That question has been debated for decades, in documentaries, in books, online forums, and now social media. People compare size, strength, hunting ability, even roar volume, trying to figure out which cat truly deserves the title. But here's the thing. The title itself isn't biological. Nature doesn't hand out crowns. It doesn't care who's more symbolic, more admired, or more visible. The idea of a king, that's a human invention. And like most human inventions, it comes with history, culture, and a lot of bias. When people argue about which cat should be king, physical strength is usually the first thing that comes up. So let's lay out the facts. Tigers are, on average, the larger of the two. A full-grown male Siberian or Bengal tiger can reach up to 300 kilograms, significantly heavier than most wild lions. Tigers also tend to have more muscle mass, especially in their forelimbs, which they use to wrestle prey to the ground in close quarters. Lions, by comparison, are lighter, leaner, and built for different kinds of fights. Their limbs are slightly longer relative to body size, which helps in short-distance sprints. And while they may not match the tiger in raw weight, lions are powerful in groups and much more accustomed to facing threats head-on, including other lions. But size alone doesn't decide dominance in the wild. One of the biggest differences between lions and tigers isn't their size or strength. It's how they live. Lions are the only truly social big cats. They form structured groups called prides, made up of related females, their cubs, and a few dominant males. Within this group, there's coordination, hierarchy, and shared responsibility. Females do most of the hunting, working together to chase down prey. Males defend the pride from rivals and often fight to the death for the right to stay. It's not just cooperative, it's political. There are alliances, takeovers, even coalitions of males who rule together. And to a human observer, that kind of structure feels familiar. It mirrors our own concepts of leadership, legacy, and power. Tigers, on the other hand, are solitary. They patrol massive territories alone, covering up to hundreds of square kilometers. Each adult tiger is responsible for everything: hunting, defending territory, raising cubs if female. They rarely interact with other adults outside of mating or territorial disputes, and they avoid unnecessary confrontation when possible. Their dominance is quieter, but no less real. So, how does this tie into the idea of a king? Well, in human culture, we tend to associate rulership with visible leadership, being at the center of a group, commanding presence, defending a throne. The lion fits that mold. It stands out. It leads a pride. It roars to assert authority, not just silently patrols it. The tiger's model of power, isolated, invisible, and self-reliant, is just as impressive, but it doesn't match the classic image of a ruler. It's not less dominant, it's just a different kind of dominance, one that's harder for humans to romanticize or relate to. So while both cats rule their domains, only one does it in a way that looks like what we think a king should be. To understand why the lion became a global symbol and not the tiger, you have to look at the map. A few thousand years ago, lions had a much wider range than they do today. They weren't limited to sub-Saharan Africa. They roamed across the Middle East, North Africa, and even parts of Europe and India. This put them in direct contact with some of the most influential ancient civilizations: the Mesopotamians, the Egyptians, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans. These were societies that didn't just observe animals, they turned them into stories, symbols, and political tools. Lions were hunted by kings, painted on palace walls, sculpted into gates. They became part of public life, feared, respected, and all above, visible. Tigers never had that exposure. Their range was mostly limited to the dense forests and jungles of Asia, India, Southeast Asia, parts of China and Russia. These were rich, advanced cultures, but they didn't have the same geographic or trade-based influence as Rome or Persia. And tigers themselves are harder to see. They avoid open spaces. They don't live near large cities. Even today, you can spend years in tiger territory and never spot one. That difference in visibility mattered. The lion was a creature of open land, visible power, and proximity to empire. The tiger was more remote, both physically and symbolically. Powerful, yes, but distant, unknown. And in the ancient world, if an animal didn't show up in your landscape or your legends, it usually didn't show up at all. That's not a reflection of which cat was more dominant in nature. It's a reflection of who wrote the stories and which animals they saw while writing them. Once lions became visible to the ancient world, it didn't take long for them to become symbolic. In Mesopotamia, lion hunts were staged by kings, not for food, but for spectacle. These hunts were carefully orchestrated shows of dominance. The king versus the lion wasn't just a man against a beast. It was a ruler proving he had divine authority over chaos and nature. The Assyrians carved these scenes into palace walls. Persians adopted the lion as a symbol of strength and protection. The lion's image spread through coins, war banners, and royal crests. By the time the Greeks and Romans took over the narrative, the lion wasn't just an animal anymore. It was a political metaphor. In myth, Hercules wore a lion skin. In the arena, lions were used to punish criminals or entertain crowds. They were symbols of both power and fear, associated with royalty, gods, and empire. And as the Roman world transitioned into medieval Europe, the symbolism carried over. Lions became guardians of castles, emblems of nobility, and the default symbol of courage and honor. The lion didn't just survive in culture, it thrived, especially in the West. The tiger had symbolic meaning too, just not on the same scale. In Hindu mythology, the goddess Durga rides a tiger into battle. In Chinese folklore, the white tiger guards the western sky and symbolizes protection in autumn. But these stories, as powerful as they are, remained mostly regional. They didn't spread globally the way Roman and medieval European lion symbolism did, and they didn't define political power in the same way. So while both cats earned respect, only one was turned into a universal emblem of kingship. Not because it was more deserving in the wild, but because it fit the image of what ancient rulers wanted a king to look like: bold, visible, unafraid. Even though lions lost much of their ancient range, they never lost their title. And a big reason for that is modern media. From movies and logos to sports teams and cereal boxes, the lion became more than a symbol. It became a brand. And no more piece of media did more to lock in the lion's royal status than The Lion King. Released in 1994, it reached hundreds of millions of people worldwide. The message was simple and clear. The lion is king. Of the animals, of the land, of the legacy. It wasn't based on ecology or realism. It didn't need to be. It was built on the centuries-old idea that the lion represents noble leadership. And that idea only got stronger. Today, lions appear in the branding of everything from luxury cars to national emblems. They're associated with courage, honor, and royalty, even in places where lions have never existed in the wild. Tigers, on the other hand, remain popular, but in a different light. They're admired for their strength, feared for their power, and often portrayed as unpredictable or dangerous. Think of characters like Shere Khan from The Jungle Book, or the way tigers are often framed in documentaries. Mysterious, solitary, lethal. They don't get cast as rulers, they get cast as threats. Even when tigers do appear as positive figures, like mascots or logos, it's usually for energy, speed, or aggression, rarely for leadership or order. And that matters because most people learn about animals through storytelling, not biology. When the lion is constantly presented as the leader, in media, in advertising, in education, that image becomes difficult to challenge. It doesn't matter if the tiger is bigger or stronger. What matters is which animal people were told from childhood wears the crown. So the lion didn't just win the ancient world, it won the modern narrative. After everything we've covered, strength, behavior, symbolism, geography, media, it's worth asking, does the title King of the Jungle actually mean anything in the real world? In nature, animals don't care about titles. They care about territory, survival, reproduction, and sometimes dominance, but only within the rules of their ecosystem. There's no crown, no ceremony, no species standing above all others in some royal hierarchy. Lions and tigers each rule in their own way. The lion thrives in social power, leading groups, defending turf, coordinating hunts, and facing constant competition from rivals. The tiger rules through solitude, covering massive territories, hunting silently, and surviving alone in landscapes where few others can. Both are apex predators. Both shape their environments, and both have evolved to dominate in the context of where they live, not to impress human ideas about royalty. The phrase "king of the jungle" was never about biology. It came from human imagination, from the stories we told, the symbols we carved, and the myths we carried across generations. And over time, the lion happened to fit that image better, not because it earned the title in combat, but because it appeared where the stories were being written. So, if we're being honest, neither the lion nor the tiger is the king. They're both just rulers of their own world, shaped by evolution, not by legend. And maybe that's more impressive than any crown. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment with what you would like to see in the following videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.